Hi everybody. This video is to show you guys how to use Proctorio and how to do some of the things that you might experience while you're taking a Proctorio proctored exam. We're going to cover a couple of different things here. We're going to look at an issue that has come up in the past, which is when you've been, sometimes students have been asked to give a password. Most of the instructors here at USI do not require a password. If they do, they would certainly give that to you. But for most of the people who are going to be watching this video, the instructors that you have typically don't have a password. So if you've not been given a password directly by your instructor with instructions saying, hey, use this as a password, but you're asked for a password, that's something, there are some things you can do, okay, before you would contact your instructor. We'll also go through the initial check and setup process that goes into taking a Proctorio exam. We'll look at a feature that many of the instructors that you might have set on their quizzes and exams, which is the show questions one at a time and no backtracking, which I'll explain what that means later. We'll also go over how to use the calculator function of Proctorio, also the whiteboard, and then we'll also go over how to get back into a quiz or an exam if you are kicked out for some reason. Now, whether or not you can do that will depend on a couple of things, and we'll go over those when we get to that part. Okay, so let's first of all, what I'm going to do is I'm going to let's say here's our quiz or our test or whatever. I'm going to just click on the link. Now you may have some instructions underneath here. I would strongly recommend that you read through all of those and make a mental note of any time limits, any restrictions. Like, for example, you may have a restriction where it says you cannot use a calculator, a handheld calculator for calculations. You have to use the Proctorio calculator. It may give you instructions on scrap paper or, whatever. Just make sure that you read those, and you will typically find those underneath here. So I'm going to click on this, and it shouldn't ask me for a password, but in the past when I've done this, it should show the password request screen. So let's see what happens. Click in there. So here is some more instructions. Again, always read these. These will be different for different exams, different quizzes. This has a time limit of 1 hour. You may only have a few minutes to take a quiz. So make sure that you're looking and reading through these and understanding what you can and can't do. So these instructions will change based on your instructor settings, based on whether it's a quiz or an exam. So make sure you're reading through that and you understand what the limitations are. So there's the password. It bleeped up there. It showed just very briefly. But what we have seen in the past is sometimes students will get stuck at that point, and the student is unable to progress forward. So invariably what happens is we as instructors will get an email saying, hey, Dr. So-and-so, it's asking for a password. What's the password? Like I said, unless your professor or your instructor has given you a password, there's no password requirement. So here's what you need to do. You simply need to clear your Google Cache and then restart your computer. So what I'm going to do, and you can Google how to do this ahead of time, but I'm going to go ahead and just show you briefly how to do this. So remember the requirements for taking an exam or a quiz using Proctorio is you have to have a laptop with a computer, sorry, a laptop with a camera, sorry, and a microphone. You have to be using Google Chrome. So the first thing you need to make sure that you do is, if you're confronted with a password, make sure that you're using Google Chrome. I doubt you would be able to even get this far if you're not, but if so, and you're faced with the password, make sure you're using Google Chrome. That's a requirement, okay? And also make sure that you have the Proctorio extension installed. If you've not done that, if that's not something you can remember doing, then probably go back into your syllabus or your course to see if there are any instructions on how to do that, and make sure that you do that before you continue. But if you've done all that, you're using Google Chrome, the Proctorio extension is installed, there's no password that you've been given by your instructor ahead of time, but you're locked on that password screen, here's what you can do. Click on the three dots here, and you want to go to Settings, Privacy and Security here. You want to click on Clear Browsing Data, and you want to make sure that cached images and files is checked. Now, if you want to check browsing history and cookies and other things like that, you can do that, but you just at least need to have cached images and files checked. And you're just going to hit Clear Data, and then what you would do at this point is you would close Google Chrome and restart your computer. Okay, and for 99% of people, this is sufficient to fix the password brick wall. Okay, another thing that you want to make absolutely sure that you're doing if you're confronted with the password is make sure that you're using a traditional computer, a traditional laptop, a desktop, or something like that. What you can't do is Google Chromebooks are not compatible with Proctorio, or I probably should say that the other way. Proctorio is not compatible with Google Chromebooks, and there have been some issues with folks that have Microsoft Surface tablets, depending on the type. So if you have a Microsoft Surface product, that could also be causing the problem. So again, traditional, a full-blown laptop, not a tablet, not a phone, not a Google Chromebook, not a Microsoft Surface product. It has to be, a traditional computer using Google Chrome. Okay, so let's pretend I've got that, and I've gotten back in. I've gotten past the password wall, and now it's given me some more instructions. Make sure that you read through all this stuff. I'll let you do that. Again, here's some restrictions here. Again, these will change depending on your instructor and their settings and that sort of thing. Okay, so we've read through this. It says the exam hasn't started yet. We got to do a couple of setups. So I'm going to do the Start Exam Pre-Checks. And so what it's doing is checking to make sure that my webcam and microphone and all that, it's saying Proctorio wants to share the contents of your screen, so they're going to record what's on my screen. I want to click. Now, if you have two monitors, you may see two screens, so you just want to pick which one you want to record. Okay, I'm using my laptop. I don't have another screen attached, so mine just shows the one screen. So I'm going to hit Share. It's going to check my connection, and it's going to check some desktop settings. So here we go. Hi there. So now Proctorio is actively recording right now, and it's saying your exam is about to begin. Use the restroom, get some water, get comfortable, get ready. If If you don't see yourself above, obviously that'd be something you'd want to address. Make sure your camera's on, make sure you've got a camera, and that sort of thing. And so, you know, if you're staring down the barrel of a 50-minute or a 60-minute exam, you know, you don't want to get up and go off camera. That's going to be a big red flag for academic dishonesty for most people. So, you know, do these things, and then you want to scroll down and hit next. Now, for most, and this is going to be something that depends on what your instructor sets up, but you may be asked to show an identification card. For most instructors, and again, may vary, a simple USI or school ID would work. Driver's licenses typically work. Any kind of government issued identification that has a photo would work. Okay. Again, you would want to see your instructor, the syllabus or the instructions on the particular quiz to see what's acceptable and what's not. Okay, so I'm going to show my student ID, and so I'm just going to manipulate it until the green lines that are forming the border are all solid. So I'm going to move it and get it close. There we go. And so I want to look at that, and I want to make sure, hey, is that visible? Is it blurry? If it's blurry, not a very good quality, what you can do is click retake. I think that's legible enough, so I'm going to go ahead and click next. So that's saying webcam image test. It says to verify your webcam is working correctly, please make sure your face is well lit, centered, and clearly visible. So again, being well lit is very important. So when you're in the test taking room, if you have a backlight or if you have a light that's above, or sometimes you may be in your room or something like that, and the lights are off, and that's just your comfortable place, that may not work. Okay, so you want to make sure it's well lit, and it just makes things a little more transparent when things are not well lit. When it's dark in the room, instructors get a little concerned that something nefarious may be going on. So we just want to dispel all that. Just make sure your room is well lit, and it's also going to be important for some of these checks. Okay, so I've got a hat on today. I'm going to just turn this around so that the light that's coming above is lighting my face. And also, however you take this picture, if in the middle of the test, sometimes it will ask you to do another camera check, make sure that you have the same, you look the same. Okay, so if I now take this picture and halfway through the exam it says, hey, we need to check your image again, and I've got my hat turned around like this, it's going to throw up a red flag, and it's going to think there's two different, there's now another person taking the exam. So this would also be the case probably if you wear glasses. So let's say you took the initial picture without your glasses on, and then you put your glasses on to take the test, and it says, hey, we need to check your image, and you have your glasses on now. That could be a red flag, and it will let you know. It will say, hey, it needs to match the image above. So just, make sure that however you take this initial picture, if it asks you again to do this later on, that you look the same. Okay, obviously the same person, but also, glasses, if you have a hat on or something like that. So I'm just going to begin the camera test. It's going to say smile in 3 seconds. And so you saw it took a series of 5 images, and it's going to store those as kind of a baseline. So if it has to check that again later on. It has something to compare it to. So now it's asking me to scan the test environment. So this is what you need to do is you need to slowly, not quickly, you don't turn it like a basketball. You scan slowly and also scan the top of the desk as well. Okay, so it says you must slowly move your webcams showing the surrounding and desk area. Okay, if you are using notes, calculators, or textbooks, please clearly show these items. So obviously if your instructor is allowing those things, that's what you want to show. So make absolutely sure that you're doing that. Yeah, that could, if you don't, that could throw up some red flags and create some problems in terms of academic dishonesty and that sort of thing. So if you have an external camera, this is a little easier. You just take it and you can just spin it around. Okay. However, like me, I've got a built-in camera in the monitor. It's a little more cumbersome, but we can still do it. Okay, so I'm going to do that. I'm just going to warn you, my office is a little messy, but let's do it. So I hit I understand, okay, and it says by clicking, I'm not going to read this to you, but you can read that, and I accept and begin exam now. So I don't know why it does this, but it starts the exam and now it asks me to scan. So the timer is running. I want to make sure you guys understand that at this point, if there's a timer, it's running. So you want to take your time scanning, but you don't want to just do it real quickly just to shave off a couple of seconds, okay? So start scan. And so I'm going to start with me. And notice kind of how slowly I'm moving it. And again, I'm taking my entire laptop and trying to make sure that I'm showing. So I'm back to me, and now I'm going to well, I guess it stopped. But you also want to capture the desk as well, if you can get that in. So try to do that. All right. So so here's the questions. So let's start with the so that's the setup. We talked about the passport issue, the initial check. Now we're going to talk about how some instructors may set up an exam to where you're given one question at a time and you cannot move back to that question either once you answer it or if you skip it. Okay, so here it says moving to the next question prevents changes to this answer. So, okay, so this is my only opportunity to answer this question. Okay, if I choose not to answer it and I go to the next one, I cannot come back to this one. I will have lost the point value for this question. If I choose an answer, so let's say I choose false, and then 10 questions away, something in the question or in the answer triggers my memory. I'm like, wait, no, actually it is USI is the abbreviation for University of Southern Indiana. I can't go back. Okay, so you have to answer this question when it's presented. You can't go back and change your answer, and you can't go back and answer it if you skip it. Okay, so it tells you here. I'm going to go ahead and click true. And what I want to do is I want to click save answer. I want to make sure that it says saved first, and then I'm going to go to the next question. Okay. Now, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and act like I'm going to skip the answer, and it should give me a warning, and if it doesn't, at least we'll know. Yeah, so here we go. It says the following question may be incomplete. Click cancel to return to the test, click OK to save the incomplete answer. So it doesn't tell me that I won't be able to go back. That's what this one does. That's what this note here says. So it's just saying, hey, you haven't answered this question. If you click OK, what was it? OK, you're going to go to question 3. And because it has this limitation to it, you're not going to be able to come back to it. Okay, so if you hit OK, and this is, I'm not a fan of this being just OK and cancel, because sometimes I think what happens is folks will read this as, okay, I understand, expecting to go back and answer the question. But what happens in this case is it's going to go to question 3. Okay, so I cannot recommend and stress enough, anytime something pops up in terms of instructions, guidelines, whatever, read it and understand. Don't just knee-jerk click OK or cancel. Okay, so click cancel, or I want to click cancel. Okay, so what color is the sky on a clear day? Let's go with blue. All right, so that's going to address the no skipping issue. Let's go to the calculator. So the calculator here, this is the calculator function. We click on that, and you can move it around if you want to. Now, this is the scientific calculator. Depending on what kind of calculations you're doing, depending on how complex, you might need to get some further instruction from your instructor on how to do some of those things. But let me just show you a couple of them. If you have a 10-key calculator on your keyboard and you're used to using that as kind of your calculator, that's certainly how I like to use it. Some of them don't. They just have the numbers at the top. That's fine. You can type in numbers. So let's say we just wanted to add 2 and 5 together. I could press the number 2. I can shift plus. Again, I'm using my hands. The number 5, and then enter for equals, and that's going to give me 7. Or I can just click it. 2 plus 5 equals. Okay. My laptop happens to be a touchscreen, so I can use my touchscreen and actually touch the buttons on the Proctorio calculator just like I would, if I were using a traditional calculator like this, a handheld. Pretty simple. This is where, basic. This is your clear. So you can just click there to clear your screen. As far as other functions, this is where it gets a little complicated. Typically what you do, so if you want to find the square root, the root, the natural log, these are memory save, memory recall, the square of a number, the power of a number. If you want to find the natural anti, so e to some power, or base 10 to some power, all this other stuff. Typically what you will need to do is you will need to press the number that you want the command to act on, and then press the command. Okay, so it's different for different calculators. Sometimes you hit the command button first, and then you put in the number that you want the command to act on. In this case, you put the number and then you hit the command button. So for example, if we want to know what the log of 2 is, what we're not going to do is click log, right? And it's saying we can't even do that. The reason why is we can't have, there's no number there. Okay, so we want to click 2 and then click the log button. Okay, and so that's the log, at least of base 10 of the number 2. Same thing with natural log, 2, and then natural log. Powers, let's say we want the 5 squared, so we go 5 and then squared, 25. Now something like this, the way this works is you hit the number first of, so let's say we want to do 5 to the, let's do 5 to the second power, okay? So we're going to clear this. We hit 5. We then hit the command, and then we go back and hit 2, and then equals, and that gives us 25. Okay? E to a power, let's just say e to the second power, and I don't know what this should be, but let's just do 2, and then the natural anti-logarithm button, and we get that. 10 to the power, so let's do 10 to the third power. We should get, I'm clearing it, we should get 1,000, and that's what we get. Okay. We also have parentheses here, so let's say we did 2 times, and then in parentheses 3 plus 1 parentheses. That should give us 8, right? Because we've all had math and algebra, and we know we do the parentheses, things in parentheses first. So this should be essentially 2 times 4, and hopefully it will give us 8, and it sure does. Okay. This is the inverse. So again, if we wanted, let's take the inverse of 2, which should be, let's clear all this. The inverse of 2 should be 0.5, and that's what we get. This is a Proctorio. I remember learning about these long ago. I don't exactly remember, but let's say we want to know the factorial of 8. Okay, we just said 8 and then the command. Okay. Pi is just a number, so it's just going to give us that number. This is a sign change. I'll come back to how you do sign changes in a second. Percents, and again, if you're doing some trigonometry, this is where those would come into play. Here's your scientific notation and your parts per million. And I'm not familiar with why or when you would use that. It's there. I'm just not familiar with it. Okay. As far as using scientific notation, the E here, you would treat this as kind of the phrase times 10 to the power of. Okay. So let's say we wanted to calculate the scientific notation of 2 times 10 to the third power. Okay. Which it should give us 2,000 because 10 to the third power is 1,000. Take that times 2, it's 2,000. So the way we would enter this is 2E3. So what this is going to give us is this is going to give us the calculation of 2 times 10 to the third power, and it should give us 2,000, and it certainly does. When it comes to negative numbers, this is where this gets a little confusing. You would think you would need to use this number, but that's not the case. So let's go back to scientific notation. Let's say we wanted to calculate 2 times 10 to the negative third power, okay, which should give us 0.002, okay? So 2 times what we would normally think in most calculators, we would go 3 and then the negative sign, okay? But if we know how to do scientific notation, we automatically know that that's not right, okay? What this button does, and this is the most frustrating thing about this calculator, is that it changes the sign of the answer. So what we essentially did is we actually told the calculator in that example, calculate 2 times 10 to the third power, and then convert that to a negative number, which is what we did here. Okay, and that's why we're getting negative 2,000. But we know that's not right. We know that it should be 0.002. So the way we do this is we say 2 exponent, and then we use the minus sign. Now it's going to give us 2 times 10 to the negative third, which should give us 0.002, and that's exactly what we have here. Okay? That's pretty much everything is fairly intuitive, you know, except for do you put the command in first, do you put the number in first? But once you figure that out, it's fairly intuitive, except for how you treat negative numbers. So let's do something that's very basic, just to drive home the point. Let's say we wanted to add 5 plus negative 2. Okay, so 5 plus negative 2, that's going to give us positive 3. Okay, so let's go back and do it this way. So if I go 5 plus 2 negative, right, it's probably going to give us negative 7, and it does, but we know that's not the right answer. 5 plus negative 2 should be positive 3, so I want to go 5 plus negative sign, using the minus sign, 2, and now we're going to be able to get our positive 3. Okay? A little frustrating, I know, and this is why I make this video, is to make sure we really understand how this works. Okay, so that's the calculator function. If there's something on here that I don't cover that you're required to use, or your instructor says use a calculator for this, but you don't see the command, all I can say is contact your instructor and see kind of what instructions or direction they can give you. Okay, so let's close that. Now let's go to the whiteboard function. Here's the whiteboard. I have mixed feelings on this personally. If you have a touchscreen computer like I have, I also have a little special pen that comes with it. This is fantastic, because I can, if my pen works, yeah, I can write stuff on there. I could do, I could use it to work out. My pen's not working too well. Okay. I could use it to work out problems like I would do if I had a scrap sheet of paper. The problem comes is if you don't have a touch screen, then you're left with using the mouse, right? Which, that's not horrible, but if you're doing derivatives, long algebra problems, that's going to slow you down tremendously. So that's the drawback of all this. Whether or not your instructor chooses to use the whiteboard or not, it's fine if you have a touch screen, not too big of a deal. If you don't, it can be very cumbersome. Okay, so that's the only downside to that. Here's a little function called start a live chat. Let's say you're in the middle of something and maybe you've forgotten how to calculate a log. I don't know if the monitors would be able to tell you an answer like that or not. I can't speak for them. So let's say, you're doing a question and it requires that you calculate the log of 2. Okay. If you contact the live chat folks and say, hey, I'm supposed to calculate the log of a number, but when I click it, it gives me this thing invalid input. How do I use a calculator to calculate a log? I don't know if they would be able to help you or not, because in doing that, right, they're kind of giving you the answer to the question a little bit. So it may be up to them on what they can help you with and what they can't. So I'm not real sure what kind of help they would be able to offer in the middle of an exam, but we will come back to that when we get to the part about getting back into an exam that you get kicked out of. Okay, so that's a calculator. We talked about the calculator. We talked about the whiteboard. We talked about the start a live chat in the middle of an exam. We can collapse this as well. So if you don't want to see your face through all that, and then we can expand that again if we need to. Okay, so let's say we get kicked out of an exam. Okay, so I'm going to go and close this out, and then I'm going to ask to get back in. So here's how you do this. You just, now, don't do this on your own, okay? But I'm going to do this just to show that I'm kicked out. Whatever reason, I want to get back in. So what I do is go back to Google Chrome. I want to get back into the quiz or the exam. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to pause the video real quick and do that because it's a little different than what you might expect. So I'm going to pause the video, and then I'll come back once I log back in. Okay, so I'm back into BlackBoard. My university uses BlackBoard. That's where we've been the whole time. And now I want to get back in. So it says your current quiz attempt cannot be resumed. Please contact Proctorio support right away. Okay. So here's the thing I want to make sure you all understand. That clock is still ticking. Okay. Now I'm not too worried about it because I've got 60 minutes to do 3 questions, right? But if you're doing a quiz or an exam and you may have 10 minutes or maybe 45 or 50 minutes or something like that, you need to understand that the clock still keeps ticking. So if you get kicked out, this is not the time to be like, okay, well, I'm kind of getting hungry anyway. I'm gonna go make myself a sandwich, I'll finish the test. Okay, that can't happen, right? So go all the way back as far as you can get. Okay, so get back into Google Chrome, log back into Blackboard, go to the course, go to wherever your quiz or exam is, and this is as far as you can get. What you want to do is come up here and click on, now, depending on what you have installed, we want to look at this little thing here. This is a puzzle piece on my Google. It may be a little shield icon on yours, okay? It depends what other things you have installed on your Google Chrome. But I'm going to click this, and what we want to look for is this. Okay, so again, that little gray shield may already be showing up here on your, so let's do it this, yeah, there we go. So it may already be showing up like that, okay? But if not, you may see just a puzzle piece, okay? So whatever you're showing, what you want to do is click here, and you want to find this little gray shield icon, and you want to click on it and click on live chat. There we go. Hi there. I got kicked from my quiz. Would you be able to let me back in? The quiz is timed. You don't have to necessarily say just that, or that exactly. I prefer to be as clear and upfront as to what I want. Okay, and she said we can proceed with my exam, and there we go. So again, it showed that little password thing. Go with thanks. Close the chat. So again, keep in mind, the clock is still ticking. This is why it is so very important to make sure you have, I'm going through all the checks again. Okay, I understand. Begin. Now I'm going to go ahead and try to answer. Yep, so it's going to ask me to scan. So again, you got to take your time in doing this. Scan. I'm going to go ahead and pick up my desk area there. Remember, it didn't catch it last time because it thought it was done. Okay, and then did it again. Done. And now I can finish. Save answer. Go to my next one. Okay. So that took a little bit of time, right? If you're in the middle of a 60-minute exam and you've got 30 minutes left for the last 5 questions, probably not too big of a deal. But if you're in an exam and you're halfway through and you've only got 4 or 5 minutes left and you still have a number of questions, that can be quite inhibiting. Okay, so you got to make sure you're on a strong, stable, reliable internet connection. You've got to make sure that you don't have any some of the things that can trigger getting kicked from an exam are a weak or unstable or unreliable connection to the internet that goes out. That will get you kicked from an exam. If you have automatic updates set on your computer to do it automatically, and you're in the middle of an exam and an Adobe Reader update pops up, it's going to kick you from the exam, more than likely, again, depending on what your instructor has set up, depending on their level of restrictions. When I personally set up exams and quizzes, the way I set them up on the instructor end, the setting that I choose, something like an update would trigger getting kicked from an exam. If you have another program open and you tab over on accident, okay, that could potentially kick you from the exam. So again, going back to reading those instructions, make sure you understand the restrictions, make sure you've got that good solid connection, making sure that your automatic updates are turned off. All that stuff will mitigate you getting kicked from an exam. That's what you want to do up front. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and hit save. What number comes after 34? 35, that's my last question. Save answer. The other thing, here, the timer's timing. Again, I can't click on any of these. You may have taken some exams or quizzes in Blackboard where you could go back and you could click on a question, go back to it. But remember that setting we talked about earlier. I can't do that. So it says saved. That was my last one. It has save and submit. It says, and again, you want to read everything. Test submission, confirmation. Click and cancel to return to the test. Click OK to submit assessment. I know that I'm ready to submit, so I'm going to hit OK. Now, again, depending on the settings of the exam, quiz, or whatever, and depending on what your instructor has set up, you may or may not be able to view results. I'm going to hit OK. And this particular, and you can read this little message here, but it says I happened to get 3 out of 3 points. It took 29 minutes and 1 hour of 1 hour, 29 minutes out of 1 hour to complete all 3 of those questions, right? If this particular exam was set up to show the results of each question, you may not get that. Again, that depends on how the instructor sets it up, but I set this up to show, this tells me that I've answered each question correctly, 1 out of 1. If I were to happen to have answered a question incorrectly, it would have said 0 out of 1 point for that question. Okay, so we just click OK one more time. And now we're back to our Blackboard screen, and we can continue on with our life or with our day or whatever. And we're done. Okay. All right. So I hope that this has been helpful. Hope it give you some kind of preemptive tools that will help you get through an exam and a quiz with a little less anxiety. For the instructors here at USI, we decided to make this video because of things that we had discovered about Proctorio in the fall that we weren't aware of. And so this is our attempt to try to clarify some things up front and make everybody's Proctorio experience as less stressful as possible until we can hopefully get back into the classroom and do things normally. And I'm sure a lot of you guys out there are hoping for that as well. If you have any questions, contact your instructor. I'm sure they'll be able to answer whatever you might have. And have a good day and have a good semester. Thanks.